2.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Harkleroad-Adams channel on YouTube. My name is Drew Hare with our two analysts, Chris Adams and Matt Harkleroad. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Matt.
And we are here to recap the first quarter of the 2020 NFL season. It is crazy that we're already into week 5 and that we've already had 4 weeks of games. Outside of the Patriots game, and then getting moved to Monday night after Cam Newton's positive test, and then obviously the all the excitement with the Steelers game against the Titans, and it sounds like the Titans are hopefully on their road to getting enough negative tests that they'll be able to actually play this week. But for the most part, things have gone off pretty quickly, or gone off pretty smoothly. So for you, Chris, I want to talk with you first. What has surprised you in the first 4 weeks of this year? I mean, obviously, this has been a crazy year already, but what is really jumping out at you?
Yeah, I think maybe the just surprising lack of 2-2 teams. There are 6 teams, 6 out of 32 who are 2-2, and people like to talk about there being parity in the NFL, but I think it's more top and bottom heavy this year, right? There's only the Patriots and the Raiders are the only 2-2 teams in the AFC, and then there's 4 in the NFC. I think it's the Saints, the Cardinals, and I'm blanking on the other 2. No one in the East for sure. I don't.
They wish.
Yeah, but there were only 6 total. So yeah, I mean, teams are kind of separating. There are some teams that are off to really horrible starts, and there are a bunch of other teams that are off to a lot of really good starts. So I know it's only 4 games, but if this trend continues, there might not be a ton of competition for the last playoff spot with going to 7. There might be clear divides in both leagues for that 7th after that 7th spot.
Not anything jumping out at you, surprising you?
Yeah, I think after one week we were saying that the NFL was going to get rid of preseason games because no one was getting injured and the play was okay and the scoring was up. But as this has creeped on a little longer, I mean, we have seen some major players in the NFL go down with injury, some of them being reasonably significant injuries that are going to take players out for long periods of time. It seems to be a lot of soft tissue type injuries. And that's, I think, what the biggest fear was without having the normal warm up to the season with the preseason games and the same normal, OTAs followed by, in practices and scrimmages with everybody that they often do, that this was going to happen. And it took a little while, but it's like every week we're watching the ticker tape go by with a number of big names go down. And I think maybe there's some validity to the idea, and it's a small sample size of one season, but I can't see the NFL changing their system going forward at this point with what's happened so far this year. I mean, maybe they reduce it to 3 or 2 like they were talking about and adding an extra game, but getting rid of the preseason altogether, I don't think is in the cards.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think
we talk about all these injuries, and there have been lots of really significant injuries, but interestingly enough, so far, knock on wood, really no quarterbacks. You had Garoppolo had the high ankle sprain, but really he's the only one who suffered an injury. And when you compare that to running backs and some of the other positions where folks are dropping like flies, just interesting. I don't know what that means, but
well, I mean, quarterbacks go through a whole off season without getting hit. They're used to that. Whereas these running backs and defensive players are not used to that.
I think Tyrod Taylor might take exception to being technically a starting quarterback. Was trying
the field injuries.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Matt, what's been the biggest storyline that's really popped out? I mean, obviously we talked about injuries, and I think everybody holds their breath every time a major player does something in a game. But any other big storylines that you've been seeing?
Yeah, I think, the one that they harp on every week, no matter what game you watch, seems to be the scoring. And I think a lot of that I think it's a little easier for offenses to get in a rhythm than it is defensively. I mean, a lot of defense there was no film on any of these teams basically for any of the defensive coaches to use to game plan with, right? That's A. B, I think it's a little harder to, go out there and try to react as opposed to drive your own will, which is what the offense gets to do, and the defense has to, kind of backpedal and react to all that. That's, I think, the number one storyline. The NFL is pushing that pretty hard. I think it's an advertisement for them, I think, at this point, is because scoring is good for them. But I think the New England and Tampa Bay, storyline going into the year was the biggest. And there's been a lot of interesting things happening there. If Cam gets COVID, of all things, and they have no backup plan. Their backup quarterbacks were awful the other night, and there's nothing there. And you go into it's like, oh, was it Belichick or was it Brady? I mean, and Belichick is coaching his ass off. Like, he is doing everything he can, and he just doesn't have a lot to work with. Whereas Tampa Bay loaded up a good quarterback with a lot of weapons who makes good decisions, and they're rolling right now. So I think that one still goes off, and we'll see, and that's going to be fun to watch for the remainder of the season. I think they both end up in the playoffs, both the way they look on paper. On paper, I mean the eye test. So I think unless Cam doesn't come back for multiple weeks, but my guess is it's a week. He's supposed to be asymptomatic, so I doubt he'll be out for any length of time. But yeah, I think those are the two that jump out to me.
Chris, how about you? Anything else you want to
add?
add?
With that, kind of just with the scoring, part of that is the small number of penalties being called, which I think is good, and I think those are related, especially the offensive holding. I don't know if the league has given the referees a directive to not call as much and let them play, which I think on the whole is good. I'd rather have them playing than lots of ticky-tack calls. But I think the holding especially is related because, there's nothing like that really sets offenses back than getting a holding call on first down and then you're sitting 1st and 20, right? That's not happening as much. Teams are having shorter fields. They're moving down. So I think that's related. Also, you're just with this passing numbers, a lot of quarterbacks are putting up insane passing numbers, but a lot of them are kind of hollow. You're putting teams, I mean, Dallas is maybe the best example of that, but there's others where quarterbacks are putting up these big numbers, but not winning games. I guess those are I guess kind of related, but the lack of penalties and the increase of offense, but maybe not efficient offense.
Yeah, Dak getting over 500 yards, but it doesn't really matter if his team can't stop anybody on the defensive end. Like, that's just. So let's go ahead and jump on into the first quarter superlatives. I want to start with the MVP, which, based upon our previous conversations, has been who's been the best quarterback so far. Chris and Matt, who wants to go first? Is it Russell Wilson, or is there somebody else out there that you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think I think Russell Wilson is the favorite. He's went off to he's having a great season, just really phenomenal. The team's rolling, and then everyone talks about the MVP is all about the narrative, and of course the narrative is, oh, Russell Wilson's never got a first place vote, which that's going to be the most tired thing by the end of the year, right? I think when we're doing our third quarter video, we're going to be like, hey guys, did you hear Russell Wilson's never got a first place vote? But I think that narrative will carry him. But I think for this video, we talked about this beforehand, and if we both kind of agree that Russell Wilson's the favorite, we're going to each make an argument for a different quarterback or another potential option. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers. The Packers are 4-0. He's looking, like he's turned the clock back 5 years. He's slinging the ball. The touchdown to interception ratio is fantastic. I think it's like 13-0 or something like that, maybe 13-1. They're winning, and he's throwing to nobody. Devontae Adams has been out the last couple games. Aaron Jones is a nice running back, but like, who was that guy last night who caught like 2 touchdown passes?
Bob Tonyan from the tight end position, 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns to Tonyan, who everyone is going to rush to pick up in fantasy football, and those are going to be his only touchdowns of the year. But I don't know if the Packers motivated Aaron Rodgers by drafting Jordan Love, but he is balling out, and he is he's carrying that team to first place. And I think they match up with Seattle pretty well. So this could be the Pack's year.
And the fact that the Packers actually have a defense in Seattle is just
Right.
atrocious. All right. So Matt, Chris took Aaron Rodgers. Who's going to be your MVP backup?
Yeah, I mean, if we're not talking Russell Wilson, who's got 16 touchdowns now and, second, I think, in the league in yardage. He might even be first. He's up there. He's doing everything you want to do, throwing maybe 2 picks. I think as an under-the-radar kind of pick, maybe not even under the radar at this point because they're 4-0. But Josh Allen is looking exceptionally good, and there may not be a funner player to watch in the NFL right now. The guy is doing so much for that team. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is throwing great balls, right? And yes, Russell Wilson is doing what Russell Wilson has been doing so far, but having to do so much more because that defense is bad and everything else that goes along with that team right now. Man, there's just so many plays that Josh Allen is turning nothing into something amazing. He's making good decisions. He doesn't have a lot of picks. Turnovers are low. He's getting it done mostly. I think he has less than 100 yards rushing right now, which is kind of crazy when you think Lamar Jackson's got 250 almost, through 4 weeks. Josh Allen, the knock was when they, last year was he's a running quarterback and that's it. He's not running quarterback right now. He's playing great ball, and the record shows, and it'll be interesting to see how that comes down. And there's so much more football to be played, but if you haven't watched a Buffalo game or watched Josh Allen clips, I highly recommend it. The guy is so much fun to watch play football.
They're letting him throw.
I agree with Matt there, and I'm going to just jump on the Josh Allen here. I love watching him play too. Like I said in our first video, there's nothing he can't do on the field, but there's also nothing he won't do on the field. So you kind of never quite know what you're going to see. But I just kind of like you look at Josh Allen, right? Buffalo let him be him, right? They didn't try to force him. So they didn't try to fix his accuracy issues or any of the questions people had coming out. They brought him along slowly. He's been following a solid rookie trajectory. He didn't come in and set the world on fire as a rookie, but he's slowly progressed. And they got a deep threat receiver in Diggs to pair with him. So they're really constructing a team that really plays to his strengths very well. And then also I did pull up the stats here, looking at those guys. So Russell Wilson has 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Josh Allen has 12 touchdowns to 1 interception. Aaron Rodgers has 13 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. That Mahomes guy, he has 11 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, who we didn't even mention in the conversation there. So a lot of really good quarterbacks to choose from.
Yep. So, going back to Josh Allen and the Bills. So Matt, would the Bills be your biggest surprise team for the first quarter, or is there another team out there that's really surprised you more?
I thought the Bills would be pretty good. They were pretty good last year, but yeah, I mean, they are really, they took everything they did well last year and they've turned it up, and they played, they haven't played nobody. They have played, they played the Rams, who looked pretty good as well, won that game. And, they're probably the surprise team. As another caveat team I'd throw in there, I did not expect Tampa Bay to be looking as good as they look right now. I thought it would be a little bit of time. They basically rebuilt that entire, besides, when you take your quarterback out of a system and put him into a new system with a guy like Bruce Arians, who's running his own, thing down there, you'd expect it to take a little longer to happen, and to their credit, it has not. I think those are the ones that I was like, wow, man. Maybe there's an argument for Chicago being 3-1, but I think they're fake good. I think they just played some horrible teams to get where they are, and we'll see. But Buffalo, they're a fun story right now, and there's no funner team to watch in the NFL right now.
Chris, I know you want to say it. Who's your biggest surprise team? I know you want to do it. They're 3-1. They look good over the weekend.
The Cleveland Browns, which I thought they'd be 2-2 at this point. So sure. I guess I will say with the Browns, the fact that after that first game where they got shellacked by the Ravens, that they just bounced back so quickly and really looked like a functioning team. And the fact that I guess maybe Kevin Stefanski is my biggest surprise in the NFL. He looks like a legit coach. He's already better than in 4 games, better than half the Browns coaches since 1999. Just the fact that without the offseason and with just the trunk rate, not even being able to see his players in person until July, just how in control he seems. You get that Dallas game was tons of fun on over the weekend, but maybe one of things that not a lot of people talk about is that drive the Browns had right before the end of the first half. It ended in a field goal, but Stefanski played the clock perfectly. They did a long kind of extend. He ran on second down at one point, got it third and manageable. Baker and Landry had a nice pickup to get third. They moved it down, got a field goal, and then didn't give the ball back to that powered Dallas offense. And then the Browns also had the ball coming back in the second half. So, yeah, I would say Kevin Stefanski being an early Coach of the Year candidate is my surprise.
They got a really big game with the Colts this upcoming week, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Both those teams are kind of surprising for different reasons. But let's go to the flip side of that coin. The biggest disappointment, if there's a specific player, a coach, a team. Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is going to kind of be funny, but maybe the NFC East. I figured it would be bad. I think we all said that it was going to be the worst division going into the league, but I don't think anybody this bad. I mean, Philadelphia looks like a train wreck, and they're in first place with a 1-2-1 record. We figured that the Giants and the Washington football team would be bad, but we thought that Dallas and Philadelphia would be battling for the one playoff spot. Maybe they would win the division at 9-7 or 10-6. We're looking at probably a 7-9 team winning that division. And I think that one of them will get to, I think Dallas will probably get to 7 just from beating the other teams in their division. But God, that division is so, so bad. And as a Browns fan, I'm glad that we get to play them this year.
Yeah. I mean, to echo what Chris said, I mean, they have been outscored by the rest of the NFL by 125 points combined through 4 weeks. Oh. That's insane. It's just so bad. They've played one game in conference, and the Washington football team wins that game, a team that against Philadelphia. So if they were expecting to get wins in conference, they're not even going to do that. So I think that they're an easy pick. But I guess if I'm going another disappointing team, I think there was a lot more expectation and hope coming out of Las Vegas than what they have gotten. And it started off pretty good to start the year, but it has not been, I think the car, I just see it falling apart, and it seems to be falling apart rather quickly. They're 2-2, but they just don't look like the kind of team that you really think can do much of anything. I don't know. I've watched them, and I feel like they're out there confused a little. And I thought that they'd be in a little better position than they are, with kind of building off what they did last year. But I think maybe they're going to take a step back. And I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, obviously, Atlanta Falcons could be in that mix. But Minnesota gets one win finally. But the Texans. I forgot completely about the Texans. The Texans have got to be up there. I mean, they fired their coach already. That's obviously not great.
4 games in, unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I think all those teams are under the radar, but aren't under the radar, but under duress, I guess is the right word. It's early, and a lot of these divisions are bad. So we'll see.
The Vikings started slow last year, and the Texans. I mean, I don't think they're an 0-4 team. They had probably the hardest start to a schedule of any team in recent year. But I mean, clearly there's things not going well there. They fired their coach. And Atlanta just sort of has that look of this year's. There's always one team that's super talented, but just can't win. I talked a lot about hollow passing numbers. I think that there's another one, Matt Ryan, and kind of what they're doing. It's more than just having a bad defense. I think they may be this year's team that has a lot of offensive firepower, but just can't win.
Yeah, it's just like between the Falcons and the Jets. I mean, those two teams just look completely devoid of talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, yeah, the Falcons have Julio and Gurley and those big names and stuff like that, but man, they can't stop anybody, and they just look miserable, out-coached pretty much every time they play. The next coach to be let go is going to be who? Or at least somebody who should be on the hot seat. I mean, obviously Bill O'Brien would have been probably one of our first choices, but Chris, who do you think should be really feeling it?
So it's interesting about Bill O'Brien. I think he actually got fired for being a bad general manager than being a bad coach. I mean, I don't think he's a great coach, but I think he's a competent coach who just made one horrible personnel decision after another, and for some reason kept getting more power. But yeah, I mean, I think the schedule and the 0-4 start sped up his departure. I mean, even though they said he was not going to be fired, but Adam Gase is the clear option. That team, the Jets are the worst team in football. They just look awful. Sam Darnold has regressed, and Gase hasn't done anything to help him out. Yeah, I mean, he's the clear choice in my book.
Yeah, I mean, it's either him or Dan Quinn at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are the two guys you should watch out for. I'd have to go look through who their offensive and defensive coordinator is. You know, it's an easy choice to fire Bill O'Brien, knowing that you had a former NFL head coach that you could, come in and step in and take a job. I'd have to look at the other staffs to see which is more likely. They'll both be fired before the season. I mean, before next season starts anyway. It's just a matter of when it happens. I don't think either one of them are going to still be there next year. So, but yeah, I'll put my money on Dan Quinn just because, man, Atlanta's bad. And they shouldn't be this bad.
They shouldn't be this bad.
Yeah. And so you got to put that – when that happens, you have to put it on the coach, right? So
Yeah, totally.
You know who
most people did not pick the Jets to make the playoffs this year. Notice how I said most people. But yeah,
well, you do know who would probably replace Adam Gase if he got fired. The
Greg
defensive
Williams.
Greg
Yeah.
Williams. He's got coaching
that's
experience.
right. God, no.
Who would be your pick, Matt, for Defensive Player of the Year as of right now for the first 4 weeks?
Right now, it's going to sound maybe like a little bit of a homer pick, but I mean, you got to take Myles Garrett. Guy's leading the league in sacks. He's 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. He's playing every other snap with those numbers too. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of snaps under his belt. He's out there for one job, and he's doing it exceptionally well. There's a host of other guys that could be up in that list, but with some big name injuries like Khalil Mack not been playing and a couple other names out there for right now, he's the clear favorite.
Yeah, I have to agree with
Chris.
that. I mean, he's leading the league in sacks, got the 3 forced fumbles. But if you look at like all the advanced metrics for defense, he's leading all of them. He's leading in pressures, and also the fact that the Browns don't have a good defense. And it's Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward when he's healthy. But that's basically the Browns' strategy is score a lot and hang in on defense and hope Myles will make a play. And the last 3 games, he's made several plays. So he's the unquestioned leader of that defense. I think that was a brilliant move the Browns did by, giving him that extension over the summer, because at this rate, he is certainly, if they would have waited to the end of the year, it would have been for a lot more. So, yeah, I think he's your leader in the clubhouse right now through the first quarter.
Yep, I think that makes 3 of us as well. Chris, do you have a Rookie of the Year? Is it just Joe Burrow or is it somebody else?
I think it's up. This one is up in the air. I think quietly Justin Herbert just playing himself into the competition. Getting a surprise start after Tyrod Taylor's incident with the team doctor and the punctured lung. But Herbert's looked really good. He's looked really smooth. Burrow's been very good too. No question at that. My worry with Burrow is that I just don't know if he's going to make it through the whole season. With the combination of how bad Cincinnati's offensive line is and the fact that they have him throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. That's not a good recipe for a young quarterback. As a Browns fan, I saw that happen firsthand with Tim Couch and a lot of other young quarterbacks on bad teams that have had happen to them. But yeah, Burrow or Herbert?
Yeah, I think those are the clear favorites. Herbert is catching up. I think Burrow, obviously has a jump start plus the big, interest when he came out of the NFL and
the narrative.
What he ended up, that always helps for rookies. Maybe as a third option. I always pronounce his name wrong, but we'll go with Allaire because it changes depending on who's officiating a game. But I think he's, having a really good start to his season as a rookie running back. He always goes to a quarterback if one's good. So unlikely to not be Herbert or Burrow, but we'll just throw another name out there because you need at least three, right?
I'll throw in one more too. CeeDee Lamb for Dallas. Looks really polished. That offense, he's going to get yards and points. Maybe not get wins, but receivers aren't judged on wins.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, you got James Robinson down there. James Robinson down in Jacksonville. He looks really good. You obviously have Justin Jefferson, who's really seemed to explode out in Minnesota as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's been slow for some of this rookie class, but man, I'm really excited for a lot of these guys across the board. Let's kind of shift gears and talk about the next couple of weeks. So, Matt, I know you've gone through the schedule and you picked out a few games that you wanted to talk about for really games you want to focus on for the next couple of weeks.
Let's just talk about. I'll try to give one game a week, maybe two in 1 week. But this upcoming week, I think circle on your schedule if you can watch it or if you've got NFL Now or League Pass or whatever it's called these days. Sunday Ticket still, is that it? If you've got Sunday Ticket, maybe consider watching the 4:25 game between the Indianapolis Colts and the Cleveland Browns. I think if you really look at the numbers in the AFC, I think you can kind of see who's going to rise to the top in each division. Probably Buffalo, the Titans, and in the West, you've got the Ravens, obviously, and in the West you've got Kansas City, right? And then you look at the next tier down, you got 3 wild card choices to choose from. I think New England's probably going to be in there, assuming Cam comes back in the next couple of weeks. And then you're going to have Pittsburgh, the other probable one. So that leaves one more spot. And so this game this week could be a huge point in how that works. Because if these teams end up with the same record, the first tiebreaker is that they played each other. So they're the next 2 3-1 teams and most likely to get in that 7th spot. So definitely watch that one this week. Next week, you've got 2 4-0 teams at this point. We'll see what happens this week, but Kansas City and Buffalo on Thursday night, which may be the best Thursday night game in the history of Thursday night games. Obvious reasons to watch that. 2 great quarterbacks playing at a high level. 2 teams that are exceptionally fun to watch. So check that one out. Then you've got the Battle of the Bays on Sunday at 4:25. Tampa Bay, Green Bay, 2 teams that are, maybe, if you say Seattle, Green Bay, and Tampa Bay look like maybe the class of the NFC right now. So that's a good one. Sunday, the next week after that, so Sunday the 25th, you've got Pittsburgh and Tennessee, which I think is going to be, the makeup game that could have been this week, but a big game that's coming up on that day, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But obviously, it'll be fun to watch those teams battle it out. 2 tough football teams that are fun to watch offensively and defensively. And then November, which would be week 8, so we got New England Buffalo. So the Battle of the East there to see if Buffalo can maintain or can take the control of the AFC East away from the perennial New England team who always wins it. So I think those could be those are my picks for games of the week. And good thing 2 of them are on the ones on Thursday, so you could literally watch all those games. So the one that had 2 games on it for the week was a Thursday night and a Sunday. So there's a lot of good football coming up.
Yeah, that Chiefs-Bills game's going to be a lot of fun. And regardless of what happens this week, as long as everybody stays healthy and keeps playing the way that they are, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Chris, what kind of trends are you seeing that you think we should be keeping an eye on for the next couple of weeks?
We talked just about like at the beginning about there being, you know, uh, hollow offensive numbers. We'll see if that trend continues. If it's just gonna, if there's gonna be these more and more games resembling Big 12 games, or our team's gonna make the adjustments like NFL coordinators usually do. And if they figure out, okay, what can we slow some of these passing attacks, or if teams are gonna look to follow teams like the Browns lead and some of the others with their running game and trying to keep some of these high flying quarterbacks off the field. And then just seeing like who separates, which of the like 3-1 teams. I think all the 4-0 teams are legitimate. We'll see what happens with the 3-1 teams, who continues that, and see if anybody, any of the lower teams are the teams who got off to a bad start is equal of turning it around. Personally, I don't really see any team that's sitting there 1-3 right now. We're certainly not 0-4. I don't see any of those teams turning it around. Maybe Minnesota, just because they started slow last year too, and then they came around. So they're maybe the only one. But yeah, like I said, I think we're going to see kind of a more of a clear divide this year between the maybe you've got the tip top, but then like the next tier, and then everybody else. Oh, Drew, you're muted.
Oh, there it is. That's when you have these Zoom calls. That's what happens, right? Matt, how about you? Any other trends that you're seeing? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think scoring will come down. I think that's the inevitable way the NFL works. Once you start to see these offenses work and what their plans are, you're going to start to see those numbers trend down. So those are again, that's the big takeaway, I think, early in the season. As hopefully people can stay healthy, and especially these running backs and defensive play. I mean, there's been so many defensive player linebackers that have been down. Hell, I mean, if you watch that Falcons game, I don't even know how many of those guys at the end of that game were starters at the beginning of the season, because there can't be that many on that defense. They are just so beat up, and they're not the only team that's feeling that way right now. And so I that's the one thing I hope changes a little bit now that we're kind of got this season rolling. And hopefully there's no more COVID disasters that postpone games, because they got really lucky with the two teams that were in that game, that it was an easy move to find bye weeks to change. But what happens if there's not that, or if it's a game that happens after the bye weeks happen? The NFL will do anything in their power not to move a Super Bowl. And so it'll be really interesting to figure out what they're going to do that, if they get rid of the week between the Super Bowl and the last week of the playoffs, the AFC and NFC championships. But I don't think they want to do that either. But they will not move a Super Bowl unless they absolutely have to. It's not like the MLB where they were going to play it on empty stadiums. There's no way the NFL thinks that they're not going to put people in the stands for a Super Bowl in February.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it just makes the most sense to be able to potentially push, cut down on that, 2-week Super Bowl period between the end of the championship games and the actual Super Bowl itself. So if they have to add, week 18 and then kind of push everything else back a week, it seems like that seems to make the most sense. But you're right. Let's hope we don't get to that point. Let's go ahead and finish up for this week, for this quarter. Chris, I know you had a final thought to talk about quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and start with your comments, and then Matt will end with yours.
Yeah, so this is just something. So kind of Matt and I over the years have had kind of a back and forth about quarterbacks on kind of what's the best way to build a team. And, do you draft a quarterback high? Do you try to play the lottery? And just kind of watching, especially watching like kind of what's happened with Sam Darnold, especially right now with the Jets. I got to thinking, looking at back quarterbacks from recent years, if you look at Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, and Carson Wentz, right? They've all had some degree of success in the NFL, right? We can debate who's better or how much success, but it's fair to say they've all been successful. You look at what they had in common, each of them were traded up for by a team. So that means they were, whether that's, the Ravens trading back into the first round for Lamar, or, the Rams trading everything to move up, trading a lot to move up to number 1 to get Jared Goff, meaning the teams that they had taken them initially were picking further in the draft and therefore had some modicum of talent around them, right? So it was not a scenario where it was just a terrible team drafting a quarterback first overall and saying, save us, and not really putting the things in place to them. I mean, even you had with Baker Mayfield, kind of jury's still out on him, but at least the Browns, they were coming off of 1-31, but by the time they drafted him, they had already brought in Jarvis Landry. The next year they traded for Odell Beckham, so they immediately were moving into asset spending mode. Then you contrast that with Sam Darnold, right? Josh Rosen in 2 different situations, going back a few years to like Marcus Mariota or even Jameis Winston, right? So maybe the best strategy for getting your quarterback right is to just be kind of crummy, but have something in place, and then when you see an opportunity to identify a quarterback, you move heaven and earth to go up and get him. So then he can come into a better situation. So keep that in mind this year with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Teams are talking about tank for Trevor. Maybe it's a team that finishes like 5-11 or 6-10 and is sitting there at like the 8th spots, who would benefit most from, trading up to grab Lawrence or Fields, and that might be a better situation. Now we'll see. We'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. We'll see what happens with Kyler Murray. Those 2 players were drafted number 1 by crappy teams, but it's just kind of been an observation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, obviously, if you can come into a situation and not be the only option, like you were talking about with Joe Burrow this year, the guy is being asked to do a ton. And not having a whole lot of help. And that's a great way to make sure that your quarterback doesn't live for 5 or 6 seasons. Cam Newton had some serious success down in Carolina. That fell apart, but we've seen,
Yeah, he's probably the last one who was like taken number 1 by a really bad team who was able to kind of single-handedly transform the culture there.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about when you have to strike when the iron's hot in the NFL right now with rookie contracts. The first pick in the NFL draft, rookie contract's a different contract than Russell Wilson signed when he signed his rookie contract. And so there's got to be something to that too. If you've already sunk, millions of dollars into your first pick of the draft quarterback, maybe then it's tougher to fill the rest of the rest of your team with good talent too. So it's an interesting way to look at things, and maybe there is some truth to that. And again, the NFL changes all the time, so who knows what the next trend will be. Maybe it'll be 5th round, 6th round quarterbacks, and just take 5 of them and see which one of them pans out or something. But yeah, I think that's interesting.
All right, Matt, anything else you want to add for your final thoughts, or just gone off with it?
No, I think we covered a lot of bases here. It'll be interesting, like I said, the last to see who comes up out of the NFC as the top seed. Right now, it looks like Seattle and Green Bay are the 2, but I think both those teams have problems, and so it'll be interesting to see if Seattle's weak defense comes and haunts them, or if it's how long can Aaron Rodgers keep throwing to guys whose names you've never heard before? If Davante Adams stays out or gets out again, it'll be interesting. And then again, you've got the specter of Tom Brady in the NFC, which changes everything apparently.
One more point too, kind of on that note. The last few years, we've seen teams be more active at the trade deadline in the NFL. Usually the NFL trade deadline was not like in baseball or basketball. It was pretty quiet. But the last few years, there's been some pretty significant players moved. Amari Cooper a couple years ago, Minkah Fitzpatrick a year ago, who really turned their teams around. So, with most of the teams having flaws, and some teams really doing the tank for Trevor thing, it will be interesting to see if does a team like Green Bay make a move for a wide receiver? Does a team like Cleveland make a move for a linebacker or a safety? Does Seattle try to improve their defense a little bit?
I'm going to call it here. AJ Green is a Green Bay Packer. Trade deadline.
Interesting.
I don't know how much he has left, of course, but yeah, I think he could still be a Green Bay Packer.
I'll take.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'll take any of those floating around linebackers left in Jacksonville. So if they've got any of those floating around, I'll take them over here in the Browns. And there's a guy's name I can think of.
Miles Jack.
Give me Miles Jack.
We'll get 2 miles. We'll go a 2 mile defense.
There it is.
That's right. You can't ever have too much miles.
The fantasy football names are already writing themselves at this point. So, all right, everyone. So thank you all so much for joining us for our first quarter recap. Keep an eye out on our channel. Please like and subscribe. Follow us both on YouTube and on Twitter. We are at Hark-Adams Sports. So for Chris, for Matt, I'm Drew. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.